Hello and welcome to the Power Hour podcast. Hopefully by now you all know about us and I don't have to do an introduction. But if you don't, I'm Scott Barrett, joined as always by John Proctor. We do a DFS pod during the regular season, but have some fun with MFL10s before preseason DFS starts. Hopefully you've also checked out all of our podcasts to date that are on iTunes. We had Josh Lake on to talk quarterbacks, Graham Barfield on to talk running backs, Rumford Johnny on to talk tight ends, Matt Harmon on wide receivers, and most recently Mike Beers on defenses. I'm actually kind of just realizing right now we had a guy named Barfield, Rummy, and Beers on the Power Hour podcast. That's kind of cool. But yeah, today we're going to mix things up. We have two guests. And we're going to do a little bit of a recap on all of the positions we've already touched on and do a little strategy on MFL 10s as a whole. Today's two guests are two of the sharpest MFL 10 players in the industry. Actually, they rank second and first, respectively, in total return on investment. The first guy I'm going to mention is TJ Calkins, who goes by @TJCalkins on Twitter, and he's also one of the most easily underfollowed dudes on Twitter. I know he's one of the sharpest dudes in the industry because he's also one of my closest friends, and we both started playing 10s together last year. All off season, we were in a DM chat talking about all the guys we were on. He kept begging me to jump on board the Devonta Freeman bandwagon. He was like, Scotty, Tevin Coleman can't catch passes. Devonta's free money. And I just didn't listen. Bought into groupthink. This season, he was also with me on Kamar Aiken and Torrey Smith as two of our most obvious values. I think Jonathan Stewart, too. And this was all well before their most recent value jumps. Just like Johnny's my DFS partner, TJ is my dynasty partner. We have 3 teams together, and really these guys are like two of my best friends and two guys whose opinions matter most to me in this industry, whether it's dynasty, redraft, or DFS. I'm always bouncing ideas off of them. Now TJ's the man, but you know every number 2 has their number 1, and last year that was Christo, aka the What. You can follow him on Twitter at TH3WHAT. He's a filthy Canadian, which kind of makes this all the more impressive and embarrassing for me and us Americans. But he's done this for 4 years now, and he's been profitable every single year. He also finished top 10 in the Scott Fish Bowl last year. I've been following him on Twitter for a few months now and really like where his head's at. Really like his strategy, and we've been locked in on a lot of the same guys. Really no surprise to me that he was number 1 in ROI last year, and I think he's going to put together another good showing again this year. At least I hope so, because of our similarities in draft patterns. What's up? What's up, Johnny? What's up, Christo? What's up, TJ?
What's going?
Happening.
All right, so Christo, I'm going to start with you. You want to talk a little bit about your success last year? It's pretty wild.
I don't know what much to talk about. Hit on everybody, it felt like. You know, I just was getting guys and value all over the place. So, yeah, I don't really know what it is. I guess I'd say it was luck, but I spent a lot of time reading and listening to different writers around, you guys as well, and you know, it worked out the way it was supposed to, I guess, or the way we all wanted to. So.
You were telling me before this that you had no idea you were the top guy. You were like, oh, I thought I did pretty good.
But yeah, yeah, it was. I just do them. I know there's big players out there. There's you know, initially my big interest with it was to get off of kind of the free mock drafting and have some money behind it, where people give it a little more attention and pay, and it just kind of grew from there. I just like following guys. What you find with the MFL 10 format that I really like is, you know, you're drafting the day after the Super Bowls ended, and you're playing with good people. You know, all the fantasy analysts are in there, the guys that force the ADP rankings and set everything up. You're competing against them, and I just find that you know, entertaining.
So last year, So last week we were talking about win rates with beers, how Devonta Freeman and Doug Baldwin really just put your team at a gigantic advantage. Did you have a lot of both of those guys?
I had a good chunk of Baldwin. As far as my winning rosters, I had Baldwin on 60% of my winning rosters. I only had Freeman on one team, so that was good for 7%. 1 out of 15 winning teams.
So 60% is jumping out to me as a lot. Are you making a point to diversify again this year, or are you just loading up on guys you feel confident about?
Go with who I want. That was like Baldwin was 60% on winning teams. So I mean, I did still have him on 40% of overall teams, but I don't shy away from the player I like or I want. So it just so happens last year a lot of those higher guys I did hit on. I had plenty of buckets in there too that didn't return value too, that were fairly high up in ownage percentages as far as some people are concerned. So.
Were there any other specific strategies you kind of stuck to, maybe in terms of roster construction or targeting or avoiding rookies early on?
I guess I shouldn't. I know it came up that if I had no rookies, I had a little problem in the way my Excel tracking file sheet goes. So I did have a few rookies, and by a few it was, I think the total was 5, 7, 8 rookies out of 45 teams. So I do fade rookies, you could say. This year there's a couple that I've drafted, but primarily if you see one on my team, I kind of got one due to the Dynasty ADP.
Is that because you kind of don't have the chance to watch a lot of college football games, or is that just something inherent? You just don't trust rookies?
I think probably both. I mean, there's college doesn't transfer to the NFL. We see that all the time. Or maybe not entirely. I know some of the analytics guys won't like that much, but I watch zero college football. Anything I know about a rookie comes off of snippets that I read here and there. So I think there's safer values. I think their ADPs get inflated and people hype them up and forget maybe that we have guys that are proven to be able to do the job at similar ADPs, and you just get values on different guys.
That's really interesting. I know TJ didn't do that last year, I don't think. Although last year was a great year for avoiding rookies. I know 2013 was such a monster year for rookies with Odell Beckham hitting. TJ, were you targeting or avoiding rookies last year?
Neither. I wasn't fading them, but I wasn't going out of my way to draft them. I think Yeldon might have been my highest owned rookie, so that didn't work out terribly. Good enough for his ADP. Slightly disappointing.
What were you doing in terms of roster construction last year, TJ?
Last year I was targeting just very much varying between 2 and 3 on quarterbacks, tight end, and defense. I did like to get a couple of the defenses I liked earlier by ADP and only have to draft 2 of them, which helps open a roster spot for a skill position player. That worked fine for me, obviously. I believe Denver was my highest owned defense, so that worked out okay, except in comparison to this year, they were not even close to being a top 5 defense drafted, I don't believe. So they were easier to get.
So I know the answer to this question, but I want to ask you who some of your top guys are, and I know one of them is going to be Devonta, and I just want to point out to the people at home how in on Devonta you were and how against Devonta the entire fantasy community was. It was literally like you would be like, no guys, like Tevin Coleman can't catch passes, he has fumbling issues. Devonta was great from a yards per route run perspective or whatever stuff you saw on tape, and people would just be like, oh, who is this idiot? No way. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of the guys you're in on and why you felt so confident about Devonta last year?
Last year, and if I'm being honest, it was less about loving Freeman, which he's obviously not going to be confused with one of the top 5 guys in ability on the field, but ability doesn't pay the bills in fantasy football. So it was more about Tevin Coleman, and I tried to start a Tevin Campbell greater than Tevin Coleman movement. But yeah, it was him, the running back position. Him, Doug Martin, Rashad Jennings were some great hits. I actually could have had a much larger season because I had a lot of teams pacing leagues that really, really got hurt by Jamal Charles and Arian Foster.
I gotta say, love the Tevin Campbell shout out. Can We Talk is one of my favorite karaoke jams.
Oh, man.
So, all right, whatever. Last year was last year. Both of you guys suck. You got lucky. I know. Definitely going to beat you out
Allen
this year.
Robinson was my highest owned player, so that probably helped too.
Nice.
All right. Well, what about this year? Actually, no. Last year, the cause of my downfall, I'm blaming on at least, was again buying into groupthink. Everyone said, like, MFL10s are a beat game. All you got to do is take 4 running backs in the first 5 rounds. Don't touch another running back, and it's an auto win. Were you guys? And I was profitable, but I feel like I could have been so much more so had I, kind of mixed up that strategy a little bit, did some 0 RB, or just not went so heavy on like Alf Morris in the 4th round. Were you guys kind of mixing things up? Were you guys going early running back and were still awesome? Christo, what happened to you?
Yeah, I was pretty heavy running back, and still am. I mean, not team 0 RB, that's for sure. It's I'm probably like last year and even this year for the most part. I'm sure I was walking out first 5 rounds with at least 3 running backs. So, and 0 problems or concerns starting 1-2 running back. I think that's the way to win. I'm gonna stick with it, I guess. I've certainly changed a little bit this year, but that's more because what's happening this year is this the push on 0 wideout is, I mean, you got to have some. You got to be able to fill a certain percent of those starting roster spots. Most, I think, DFS theory will let you know, and just normal fantasy theory, you want to flex a wideout when given the chance against a kind of similar or equal running back. But yeah, I was heavy running back last year, and I'm still kind of finding myself that way this year as well.
What about you, TJ, this year and last year? How are you approaching running backs early?
I have not changed in that I'm a best player available guy. That was last year. That is this year. And with the trend shift from running back to receiver this year, I am ending up with more earlier running backs this year than I even did last year. And I had some people comment last year that I was a zero running back guy. That simply wasn't the case. Any chance I got, I was drafting Bell, Charles, Lacey, just like everyone else. So that's not the case. The best player available is how I roll, and sometimes wide receivers get to me here this year. And I went through, I think I have 5 what would be considered 0 running back teams this year of 84. So not exactly my go-to strategy. And generally,
I think you're mentioning. Sorry to hop in there, but you're mentioning best player available, and I think that's kind of the main difference here. Where I'm struggling with the 0 wideout this year, 0 running back this year, is that the wideouts have just been elevated to a level where they're not actually the best player. People are taking them because they're taking them, and they're bumped way up. I think it makes sense that we'd all end up with running backs more often as the best player that's sitting there early on in drafts. But
yeah, for the past few years, there have been a bunch of different common strategies. There's been 0 RB, there's been robust RBs, 0 wide receiver, whatever. Upside down drafting, RB was probably the most common, but there was also always, just do the opposite of whatever everyone else is doing, and that's the way to find value. And it kind of seems like that only has encouraged your desire to draft running backs early this year. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I'd agree.
absolutely.
And I think I think last year that was the thing that was like really bad about the whole take 4 running backs and you got to win was like everyone winning it. So people were taking C.J. Spiller like 12th pick of the second round. Like just running backs were going at crazy spots, and that's kind of what's happening with wide receivers now. If you look at like Devontae Parker starting to go in like the 3rd and 4th round, and he has like 4 games any good in his entire career. We barely even seen him play. So you have these wide receivers who are going insanely early because people are just refusing to take a running back, where the same thing was happening last year where people were just refusing to take wide receivers.
So TJ just kind of touched on something. He said last year he went out of his way to draft Le'Veon Bell everywhere he could, which is definitely the case for me. This year things have gotten a little like I don't know what to do with Le'Veon Bell. He's had 2 season-ending injuries to the same knee over his last 7 games. I feel like a jerk right now name dropping, but I was just at the FSTAs a couple of weeks ago. And I got to meet Matthew Berry, which is really cool. I'm a huge fan of his. Johnny is too. Talked to Stefania Bell, and me and JJ Zacharyson, or however you pronounce his last name, were talking to him, and we were like, Matthew Berry said he had Adrian Peterson number 1 in his standard redraft ADP, and it made a strong case for him. And JJ was like, well, what about Le'Veon Bell? Like, come on. And he said, Stefania has like some serious reservations about him this year, and so do the Steelers. I don't know if that's hearsay. I think it's kind of hearsay, but it has made me bump Le'Veon Bell down a little bit. Christo, I know that's someone you're kind of going strongly avoiding. Do you want to talk about Le'Veon Bell a little bit? Because I think this is important.
I just said he's getting that Davis Maddock wave, like it's not not happening. I got 1 share through 15. I threw about 50 drafts. I think I'm in for like 58 at this point. I got 1, and there's no chance of that increasing until probably training camp, like at best. I won't necessarily be off, but I'm gonna have to see him run. I'm gonna have to see him. I'm gonna have to see it. I don't know. He's, D'Angelo's too good, 230 behind him. D'Angelo was good in Carolina. He just got stuck in that timeshare that could never really pull ahead. And I think like last year, especially now that the Steelers are used to Bell not being around, they might just keep him fresh. And as much as I love good rap music, as much as I love the good rap music, you can't be rapping about getting paid like the top salary. It's not like it's just not going to sit well. It's not happening. Like you just could throw all types of narrative street stuff on it, but I am not on Le'Veon Bell this year by any means. So,
Christo, if I can guarantee you he plays and starts 14 games, where do you take him?
I'll get him in the second there.
Oh my God!
Guaranteed.
Overall?
No,
overall?
Second round. But I mean, and this is what it is. Really, kind of much like you, best player available. There's like everybody's in for the right price. So this is why I won't own him there. I won't own Gronkowski. There's a bunch of guys I'm just not gonna own, and they're good. But Bell, I'd probably take him in the second if you give me 14 games. But I don't see any reason of putting. Think all the guys you get 16 from. You got to have. I don't know. It's got to be there.
TJ, tell Christo why Le'Veon Bell has the highest upside of any running back this year.
Well, the Steeler running back. I mean, you saw what D'Angelo Williams did as the feature back with the bad foot and honestly not being all that good at football anymore. It's going to be tons of targets, tons of touches, and absolutely nothing to worry about. If you're guaranteed 14 games, he's the easy 101.
I can't do it. I just can't. It'd still be. I mean, he's not the 101 to begin with. I guess is the first problem with that. He's the argument here is many feel him to be the number 1 running back, which I clearly don't feel him to be. But he's not even the 101. He doesn't even come into play until 104, 105 to me.
That's because of the injury concern, though. Getting guaranteed 14 games, that's alleviating.
I don't know. I'm not sure I'm taking him over Brown or Julio if he's perfect. But, I mean, that's, those two go regardless. Maybe I take him over Odell. I have some kind of weird hatred for Odell. I'm not sure what it is. Probably, I got a couple buddies that are Giants fans, and it's too much to handle.
Yeah. You're stuck in here with one, too.
But, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a huge Odell Beckham guy, giant fan. I think he's the man. I think he's awesome in this format, and I think Sterling Shepard only raises his upside this year. But I actually have him ranked third overall. I'm going Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, and then I start picking off the running backs. You guys, who are your top threes? Johnny, I'll start with you.
Brown, Julio, Beckham. I feel like it's like so overplayed, but then I'm taking Bell fourth, just to throw that out there.
TJ?
I think Brown's got to be the first wide receiver, then it's open for interpretation. I'm actually taking OBJ over Julio, but they are 1, 2, 3 for whenever I draw the first, second, third draft slot, with Bell first or fourth, same as Johnny. So
yeah, go Brown, Julio, and then kind of mix it up, Odell / AJ at this point. And I'm definitely going. Yeah, it doesn't matter. The list is too long of those I'm going over Bell before it's like Gurley or David at that 4-ish 5 range.
Actually, to touch back on kind of like what Le'Veon Bell represents, what are you doing about players who are injured right now or have questionable statuses beyond just Le'Veon Bell? Like last year, I had a ton of Brandon LaFell against TJ's better judgment, and I was like, no, he'll be all right. They're saying he'll play week 1, and then the injury just kind of dragged on and on and on, and it kind of killed me. We have some more interesting situations like that this year, like Perriman with his kinda ACL injury. Edelman, what are you guys doing with guys who are hurt right now? Do you think you're better off just avoiding, or Christo?
Yeah, by and large, I avoid. I got a little more confident in Jamal Charles coming back, which might seem hypocritical. But even still there, I only have like 3 pieces where I have one of, Bell, and he's significantly cheaper. Like he's easy in the second round. So, but yeah, I don't see much point in risking it, to be honest. And the earlier we draft in the season, and we still are pretty early in the grand scheme of things, I'm not touching them until I see them play or get out on the field.
What about you, TJ?
I think we have kind of a philosophical difference here. I am all over the upside, man. I think Ricky Bobby describes MFL10s the best. You ain't first or last. So I am all over the values created by injury. I'm taking Bell. I have 12 Jamal Charles shares. I wish it was more. Sammy Watkins might be the best wide receiver value you find, falling into the 3rd round nearly every draft. I am actually still, now that he's free, hopping on the Josh Gordon train too.
Gordon's going to make or break people this year.
I mean, in the last round, it's all upside.
I can't do Josh Gordon, man. I can't do Josh Gordon, or I wasn't taking Martavis either when the rumors flew with him. I mean, those guys are just morons. No, I guess the one guy I'm taking the injury discount on right now is Melvin Gordon still, and Tyler Eifert, who's now falling into like the 8th round. So those guys who are going like really, really late, who people have just kind of written off, are the guys that I am really in on when it comes to injuries. With Edelman, at the beginning of the year I was like in on Edelman, and now I'm just kind of, I don't know, because he's always hurt. He's never really had a full season. So those guys who are consistently injured are a little scary. But I'm happy to get them when they're going in like the 7th, 8th, 9th round range. Like Ryan Matthews is still getting the injury discount, and nothing has changed for him.
Yeah, he's a huge value, I think.
Him and
Monstrous value.
Yeah. Amazing spot for Matthews. I don't know. I've heard though, like if he starts on pup, like suddenly it almost doesn't matter how cheap they are. I kind of think in this, in the way this game's set up, where we need them to like play every week. If we know they're gone for a month, 2 months to begin with, I think it almost makes sense to take them right off myself. Especially like at the tight end position, where we're only going to carry like 2, 3, I think. I don't know. See the odd crazy person take 4, but it's not. We're kind of limited on who we can get. So to burn one and take not half the year, but gift a quarter of the year, punt it at the position, it seems risky to me. But that's again, that's kind of what you're talking about, TJ. Philosophical difference for sure. Like these. To me, I look at these things like they're 8%, as that term that came out from Beers last week, which I think the first I heard of it was a couple of years ago, is just, to get, just what we're all going to win, just following ADP. So really, I'm just trying to be, 4% better than the rest. And that's pretty hard to do in February, but I think, in July, that's pretty easy to do. So, and if we can all do that, then we end up being profitable and we walk away. But
more philosophical difference. I feel like February, March, April, I went back through my teams. I felt like that was ROI gold, and now a lot of the pieces that have come out bumped up some of the values. It's made things a lot harder. It really has.
Yeah, and I think but that could be you and I being totally different. I'm not analytics, like I'm a fan.
Fair enough.
My skill is sifting through all the stuff that the people who put in the hard work do, right? And listen to the right dudes and get on the right players and turn that into the thing where it's like, so I have no edge in February up against the likes of, it's fantasy beasts that are drafting the day after February. They're in it, and I just keep 1 or 2 going just to stay involved and to watch the trend of, where guys are going, and then, just well positioned or primed to pounce on stuff in June when, like the masses start coming out or getting at it. So I think that's kind of, you hear that a lot. We're trying to win a GPP, and I don't view it like that. Like it's not a GPP to me. You get it that it's first or second. Like you can just play good, solid drafting, stick to the script, and I think most people could be profitable, when it's said and done. Obviously not if everybody starts doing that. So I mean, keep drafting rookies and your favorite players, because just capitalizing on value and equity that's there, I think is puts us up.
Yeah, it's really awesome. It just shows you can win both ways. Whether you take Christo's approach, where you just go after safety, just try and have the best draft you can, just accumulate the most points as possible, or do it TJ's way, where just like all or nothing, treat it like a GPP. That's definitely awesome. To your point, though, TJ, about when is most profitable for you for drafting, I could definitely see the earlier months best for you because you watch a lot of college games, you watch a lot of rookies, and kind of get early on some guys. For me, my most profitable month was August by far, and that's when I saw I was up against the weakest competitors. I felt like I had the most knowledge. I'm like, okay, Niles Paul is out. Jordan Reed, got to load up on him. What about you, Johnny? What do you think? Do you think you're at more of an advantage playing earlier, where you have a lot more knowledge, but you might be playing against, or a lot less knowledge, but you might be better than your opponents to some regard, or later on where you're up against fishier opponents, let's say?
I think I got to agree with Christo a little bit, where TJ has a big advantage in the February area because he's he knows the rookies a lot better than a lot of the other guys. So if you're doing your rookie research, then I think you have a pretty big advantage just before the draft because you know who the good players are and you're getting huge discounts on the rookies. Whereas, I'm not going to watch rookie film because I'm just too lazy. So that's an area where I don't think I'm going to excel. So I didn't do a whole ton of drafts really early. But you definitely missed out on some values, like where TJ was taking a ton of Ezekiel Elliott in the 3rd and 4th, and now he's a first-round pick.
I just found a tweet I sent to Mike Marr. I'm sure you guys will know him from 4 for 4, but I went on a quote-unquote kind of idea. Maybe a beater from late May to early July. I won 9 of 16 and placed no worse than 4th. So, but like I didn't win a single league that I entered in August last year, which is ridiculous, really. That's when you have all the information and you can make the good decisions, and it just doesn't. People made better ones than I, for sure. So.
That's really funny and interesting, Christo. Allow me to take some time off right now for our intermission. You guys want to go ahead and grab beers or go to the bathroom, you can do that. All right, so last week we had ads, but today we're not going to do that. Why? Because ads are as irritating as the hiccups, flows just grow through me, like trees to branches, cliffs to avalanches. It's the praying mantis, deep like the mind of Farrakhan, a motherfucking rap phenomenon. I apologize. That is a reference to Christo's Twitter username, The What, which is an amazing song.
Fantastic.
So no ads right now, but I do want to do our shout-out city segment that we tried to do last week. And this week it goes out to Aaron H. Yes, the Aaron H., the guy who enters the most leagues and wins the most money by a lot every year. I tried super hard to get him on the show, but he said podcasts aren't really his thing. So after talking to him over the span of a few emails, I've concluded that he is not a robot, contrary to common speculation, but is actually a super cool guy who just happens to be really great at fantasy football. How great? In 2014, he had 75% ownership as the guy who was drafting the most leagues in Odell Beckham Jr. pre-draft, and then 50% post-draft with the hamstring injury. In 2015, his most owned player by a landslide was Brashad Perriman, but this was way before anyone else thought he could slip into round 1 of the actual draft. This year, his pre-draft guy was Jonathan Williams, which was also way before, for instance, I heard Greg Cassell a couple weeks ago on a podcast call him the most underrated back in the class. I asked him for a few quotables for this segment. He said he's really enjoyed the podcast he's listened to so far from us, and even though he makes a point not to pay any attention to other fantasy analysts, which I think is smart because most fantasy analysts are terrible, he said he'll go out of his way to listen to our DFS pods during the regular season, which is really cool. He also said he's never heard of Matt Harmon, which makes him possibly the only one. He said our data on him owning a lot of Kelvin Benjamin was wrong. We kind of shot that out during the wide receiver episode. He thinks maybe I just ran into a small sample size, and I think he's correct. And he did give us one take. He said that coming out, he had Mike Evans and Kelvin Benjamin neck and neck in terms of college tape. And I thought it was super interesting because it kind of connects back to something that Johnny has been ranting about for a while. I compared the stats to Kelvin Benjamin's freshman year to Mike Evans' sophomore season, and they're eerily similar in terms of everything: drop rate, fantasy points per target. Johnny, you want to talk a little bit about Kelvin Benjamin versus Mike Evans, and we can see what Christo thinks?
I think they're really similar players in that they're like practically tight ends, and they're not really just like big, tall, bumbling players that don't do really anything particularly well, but they are tall and they are big and they are, faster than they should be for the size that they are. But when it comes to being clean football players, they are really not that at all. they struggle with their routes and they struggle with consistency at times. But if they're going to get 140, 150 targets, they're going to do a lot of things with it. The question is, how long can a player struggle on the field before he starts losing those targets? And I don't think either of them are guaranteed the targets that everybody thinks. Well, everyone thinks Evans is guaranteed the target, and everyone thinks that Kelvin Benjamin is suddenly going to lose his job to Ted Ginn and Devin Funchess. So I don't get where the spectrum lies on those two at complete opposite ends.
Yeah, my thing with Evans is just he was terrible last year. He really was on a per target basis. Jameis Winston averaged a QBR of 71.5 when targeting him, which ranked dead last among all wide receivers who recorded at least 50 targets. And he really just had an outlier year in targets. Vincent Jackson, who was hurt, and he's getting up there in age, and maybe he's done. But he had, prior to last season, he had 4 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons and recorded at least 7 touchdowns in 3 of those years. You guys know I'm high on Austin Seferian-Jenkins. I think if I were to buy Mike Evans, I'd want it at a discount, and we were just not given a discount based on how he performed last season. Christo, what are you doing with Mike Evans?
I'm not touching Mike Evans. I'm drafting Vincent Jackson, and lots of them. I'm at 35% right now on him. He's almost like an auto pick for me in the 10th. Although that's changing a little bit now because that's where my highest owned wideout, Kamar Aiken, now has to be selected if he's not already gone. So, I'm off Evans. I don't see much point in putting a second-round pick into him when I can take Jackson way down in 10, 11, maybe a little bit later if you get lucky, and hopefully snag half the production, if not better, because he was hurt last year. He wasn't bad. He was hurt. So, and it wasn't hurt like Le'Veon Bell hurt. So I think he's coming back, and hopefully can be. If he's just marginal, he's paying off that value. So.
TJ, what are you doing there?
I have 0 Mike Evans, and I won't have any Mike Evans. To take Mike Evans, it means you are taking him over at least one of the group of Jordy, Sammy Watkins, Alshon, Keenan Allen. It just makes absolutely no sense to take him where he's going. So I am completely out on him. I have a handful of Vincent Jackson. I was on ASJ until he lost his mind, and now I'm just...
now's the time to buy. Come on.
Now I'm mixing in Brait as a tight end 3 on very, very rare occasion. So that's what I'm doing with the non-running backs in Tampa.
All right, so Christo just alluded to the golden boy of the Power Hour podcast alongside Brian Hartline. He mentioned Kamar Aiken, a guy that all 4 of us have loaded up on. I think he's in our top 3 most owned guys. Maybe not so much now after the Harmon bump, but we were all definitely way in on him. At least a couple of months ago to start off the season. So I think let's talk about the guys we're highest on. I don't know if you guys want to start at a position. Yeah, let's do that. Why not? Let's start with quarterbacks. TJ, who are your top 3 or top 4 highest owned quarterbacks?
I'll cut it off at 4 because that seems to be a big tier break. Ben Roethlisberger, Ryan Tannehill, Drew Brees, and Russell Wilson are all right at or over 25% for me. And I've been of the opinion this entire season so far that there has been a huge overcorrection for quarterbacks 2 through 6 or 7. And I've been seeing that value present itself.
I don't know what that was, but yeah.
That was DraftKings. That was the DraftKings lady telling score updates.
You need to turn your phone off, TJ. I'm mad at you.
Oh, that was Johnny. That wasn't me.
Even worse. Yeah, I agree with you. We touched on this with the Josh Lake podcast. Quarterbacks are down on average like 13 draft positions. like more than a full round. It kind of makes no sense. I know a lot of us are going to agree on Russell Wilson, but one guy I don't agree on, but I'm willing to let you sell me on, as evident by a few of our dynasty leagues, is Ryan Tannehill, who's news just came out recently that Adam Gase says he's going to up the pace considerably this season. I think that's good. He took my guy Leonte Carew. Why don't you make a pitch for Ryan Tannehill?
Well, it's pretty easy, really. I don't know exact what quarterback number he's going at, but he's been consistently a 13th to 15th round pick since February. He's coming off 4,200 yards, throwing to a lot of garbage in addition to Landry last year. Parker wasn't necessarily good, but for a few games. You're adding Carew. More importantly, you're doing it in Gase's offense. And this is a guy who almost assuredly is going to finish in the bottom half of the quarterback one tier, and he's just not being drafted there.
All right, what about Roethlisberger? Are you taking him over Drew Brees?
I was in February and March, and then I shifted to Brees, and now Brees is just continuously getting more and more expensive, and it's frustrating because you want Brees on every team, really, with what was a 9th round ADP, then an 8th round ADP, and he's been going up in the 7th recently, so that's getting a little bit tougher. I am taking Russell Wilson over Brees, but I am taking Brees over Roethlisberger now.
Christo, you're high on Brees, correct?
Yeah, man. I like him. I like his spot. I do like him at the 7th. So he's in play for me pretty much from there on. Obviously, we all like cheaper, but I have a hard time walking away at the 7th in a lot of cases. Kind of depends a lot on how my roster has shaped up to that point. But yeah, my top 3 right now are Palmer, Brees, and Tyrod Taylor, and I have a tie at Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. So this might be a philosophical difference again, but yeah, I'll pay the price for a QB. So Cam's in play from late 4, early 5 on. It's not an auto, but he's in play, and they're pretty much all in play from round 6 on for me. So.
No, this year I think you might be right. We were just talking about the buck the trend trash strategy, just kind of do the opposite of what everyone else is doing, and this really seems to be the year of the late QB in terms of QB ADP, and Aaron Rodgers' ADP has dropped a total of 37 spots from last season. From 2008 to 2014, he averaged 353 fantasy points per 16 games. Last year, it was 309 points per 16 games. I think there's a really good chance he rebounds, and people drafting him are taking full advantage of that. Johnny, who are some of your top quarterbacks?
Flacco is my most owned quarterback by far. That's one that I just keep auto-clicking. He's practically free. And everyone wants all of the pieces on that offense, but people just aren't taking the quarterback. And I think the easiest way to get that production there is to take Flacco. He was on pace for his biggest year last year, and I don't see why it's going to change. Their defense is going to be just as bad. And then I have a good bit of Dalton, and then I have a tie for Brees and Luck as my third most owned. And I think that's kind of just some variance. I keep having Luck fall past Russell Wilson in a lot of my leagues, so I'm just ending up with him, and that's not really indicative of the ADP. I'm not really taking him over Wilson. I would rather have Wilson, but it's just not falling that way for me.
All right, so Wilson I think is interesting, mainly because he's my second most owned quarterback. I have Romo first off, who has finished top 12 from a fantasy points per game basis every season prior to last year, dating all the way back to his rookie season. And then number 2, I have Russ. Number 3, I have Fitzpatrick. And I think most of that was from just when I was like, oh, he's definitely going to sign any week now. I've probably laid off a little bit, but if I am grabbing a third QB, it's either him or Gabbert. I also have a good amount of Dalton. But yeah, I like Russ a lot. I sent out a series of tweets on this a couple of weeks ago. I really see a big change in kind of in scheme. I think they're going to up pace a lot. I think that the signing Baldwin as well as drafting Procise kind of just marks a shift in philosophy, and I see them going more up tempo, leaning heavier on the pass without Lynch. I guess what about wide receivers? TJ, I know you're high on Doug Baldwin. Do you have a lot of him?
I don't have a ton of Doug. I have 13 shares. So he looks like he's my 14th most owned wide receiver. Not because I don't like him. I think he's still a value. You know damn well I think there's an even bigger value in that passing game. In a tie for my most owned wide receiver in Jermaine Kearse. He was, up until our buddy Pat Thorman put a piece out on last week, going 17th or later all off season, and I was gobbling up as much as I could there. You want me to keep going on Seattle or move on to different receivers?
Christo, who are your wide receivers?
Kamar, number 1. 39%. I got Stevie at 37%. Willie Snead at 37% too. Then Vincent Jackson at 35. Rashard Matthews is at 29, and then I got Kearse right after that, so I'm at 27. So a lot of the same guys. Probably maybe the only one different there will Snead.
We actually talked about Willie Snead a good amount on the wide receiver pod. Kind of talked about how on a per target basis he was in a lot of ways actually more efficient than Brandon Cooks was last year. You guys want to just do a love fest about Kamara Aiken right now?
Sorry?
You guys just want to talk about why we absolutely love Kamara Aiken?
Because he made me lots of money last year. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. My whole approach to him this year was, and I think somebody posted one of those nice little RotoViz ADP things, and I remember somebody calling me out specifically on Twitter. I took him at 94, like way back in April, before I knew that I was the only one feeling about him this way, So when they said, you're going to have a lot of Kamara if you're drafting him that high, and, I was able to rail it way down after that. But I just, I don't have any faith in Steve Smith coming back to do anything meaningful. And that's like that's them, He popped in and he did it, and I think he'll do it again. He performed. He stepped up when he was given his chance, and I think teams reward that. He's going to be playing on a garbage contract. They'll be happy to feed him the ball and get production out of a low salary guy.
Yeah, as of 2 weeks ago, he was ADP wide receiver 61. Last year, he finished as wide receiver 27. He was PFF's number 15 graded wide receiver overall, and he ranked 20th in fantasy points per snap. I just think people are sleeping on him, and you're right. Steve Smith is old, and Perriman has that weird ACL thing that keeps popping up. Mike Wallace is terrible and maybe doesn't even want to play, doesn't even enjoy playing football. He was our third worst graded wide receiver at PFF at 119 qualifying. Was there anything you wanted to add, TJ?
Aiken was a huge value. He's probably getting close to slotted in properly now after the Harmon bump. Either Wallace or Perriman is going to return value. It will be Perriman if he's on the field. Otherwise, it'll be Wallace regardless of how bad he actually plays.
I think Wallace is going to do well there. I don't know much about Perriman. I don't think any of us. Well, you would have seen him play. I've never, seen him play. But yeah, their value, they're way down now. Like I think I saw Perriman sitting around in like the 19th round, which is, it's gone way too far.
He's fallen.
Yeah, like if he gets.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, he's gonna. One is like you're 100% right. Somebody's gonna provide some spark there for somebody. Sure.
I just feel like him and Aguilar, you're getting discounts for different reasons, and that discount has gone a little too overboard the last month or so.
Johnny, what about your wide receivers?
Aiken, obviously, and then I got a bunch of Chris Hogan, when you could still get him in the 13th, 12th round or so. He's starting to creep up, though, with with Edelman being possibly still hurt. And then Jermaine Kearse and Torrey Smith. Kearse, I just take him at the end of drafts, and then Torrey. Although I've backed off Torrey now because he's going in like the 7th round, and that seems a little expensive.
So I've noticed an interesting divide between you and TJ and me and Christo. Because let me just pull up my most owned wide receiver. So mine is Torrey Smith, Stevie Johnson, Kamar Aiken, and Brandon LaFell. We're going Stevie J at almost the exact same price, a little cheaper, that you guys are going Curse. Do you guys want to do a little bit of a debate here? Why are you guys so heavy on Curse over Stevie J at the same price?
Well, I guess you touched on the first reason. Seattle's turning up the pace, more pass happy, and I guess it's not a foregone conclusion. I think San Diego's going in the opposite direction from last year. There's going to be less targets available for wide receivers, less targets available for everyone, but Scott and I also have some debates on how often Curse will be on the field versus Lockett or another tight end. So that is up for interpretation, but that's also up for interpretation in San Diego. Mike Beers is real heavy on Travis Benjamin, which could easily be a big problem for Stevie as well.
I just think San Diego likes to throw the ball a lot, whether it's because they sucked last year and they were forced to throw. They had no offensive line. It had to be a throw. I don't know. I don't know if there's enough to go around, but Stevie seems safe to me. I'm pivoting off of Stevie onto Jermaine too, which I did last year. I was heavy on Stevie at this point, and I pivoted off to Baldwin. That worked out well. Maybe catch lightning in a bottle twice. Maybe unlikely to be the same, but Curse is good. He's a good player. So.
Phillip Rivers led the league in pass attempts last year, so even if TJ's right, it does decline. I think there's still a lot of value there. I am super in on the Seattle offense. I don't think people realize how big any uptick in passing will be for the offense. Over the last 4 seasons, Russell Wilson ranks second, fourth, and third among all quarterbacks in terms of fantasy points per dropback. Last season, among all wide receivers with at least 60 targets, their wide receivers ranked first, fourth, and seventh in fantasy points per target. That's absolutely crazy. With Baldwin coming in first, Lockett coming in fourth, and Curse coming in seventh. I think I really love Lockett as a player. We talked about this with Harmon. I think he's an amazing route runner, just constantly gets open. I think he completely stole away the majority of playing time from Curse, but I do see Seattle going a lot of 3-wide next year, and I'm kind of doing the same thing as Christo, where I have a ton of Stevie J right now, but now I'm kind of differentiating those shares with a little bit of Curse. Hopefully Bolden signs somewhere soon. What do you guys think about LaFell? It looks like I'm the only guy on him. I think, he might not be the most talented wide receiver, struggles with drops, but Boyd's guaranteed to play the slot, which isn't too productive of a role. LaFell's going to slide into the Marvin Jones role, which I think should be a guarantee for 75, 80, maybe more targets easy. Are you guys looking at him at all in this kind of in the 19th rounds around him and Woods?
Yeah, I got 10% on him. I'll probably feel more comfortable going forward on him now that little blurb about Boyd popped out about playing the slot. Everyone knew there'd be targets in Cincinnati. I kind of, Tyler Boyd's one of the kind of 2 rookies that I draft on purpose, so to speak. Him and Sterling Shepard. Outside of that, it's pretty much a mistake if you see one on my team. I think LaFell's probably that. I think that's good money. He should have been really good last year in New England. I have no idea what happened there. Maybe that foot or ankle, whatever it was, that kept him on PUP and then extended him is what really hurt him. But I had a lot of them last year, and it makes sense. A nice big target across from AJ to scoop up some stuff, especially with Eifert out of the way now. So.
All right.
Yeah, he's my 6th most owned wide receiver, so I'm with you, Scott.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, I've been saying he's going to play the outside role, and Boyd's not going to play the slot since they drafted him. Just didn't see that in Boyd's kind of range of outcomes based on some college statistics that PFF had. What about running backs, Johnny? Who are your top 3 or 4 most owned running backs?
My most owned running back, and this was he's come up in ADP, but that was Shane Vereen for a while. You could just kind of take him in the 15th, 16th round. But my actual most targeted running back would be Melvin Gordon and Carlos Hyde.
Yeah, I'm not in on Hyde. I mean, yeah. I am a little. Sorry.
Yeah, neither was Graham Barfield. And I think this comes down to whether or not you see him getting targets, which TJ and I actually talked about today. Based on his entire career, it's unlikely he's going to get targets. Based on what Chip Kelly's been saying, what Hyde's been saying, he's going to get a ton of targets. Even if he doesn't, he has pace working behind him. Maybe not game script, but he does have pace working behind him. Maybe not an awesome O-line, but he does have pace working behind him and should be in line for a lot of usage. Johnny, why are you so heavy on Hyde?
It's it would be one thing if there were some really sick receiving backs behind him, like a Darren Sproles or something, but it's not like Sean Drawn and Mike Davis are these world beaters. So I think Sean Drawn is going to get receiving work like he did last year, but it's not like he was very good last year. He survived solely on volume. We weren't playing him in DFS because he was really good. We were playing him because he was getting 20 carries and 6 targets. So it's not like he's going to suddenly
100% of the snaps.
Exactly, and
literally 100%.
It's not like he's so good that he's going to be taking work from Hyde, and all Hyde has to do is be serviceable in the passing game, and he's not going to come off the field because they're not going to change their personnel. And Kelly's not going to put these guys on the field just who can't run the ball, and Drawn is not good at running the ball at all.
I've actually got an article just come out today on 2QBs.com. Thank you to Sal and Greg for that. But it touches on the target percentage as it goes around in San Fran. And last year was an outlier for Chip with running backs being heavily targeted. And in the last 2 years, Chip has supported at least 2 backs. So that's what makes me worry a little bit about Hyde's receiving value. But to Johnny's point about the actual carries, he should get most of them. And that should keep his floor relatively safe at ADP as it is right now in the 4th.
Scott, you're not buying Hyde?
So I like Hyde, but what I'm doing right now is I'm drafting another running back who has a very similar ADP, and that's C.J. Anderson, who I went in on last week's pod during the advertisements. Just completely love him. See a huge year happening for him. I think he's the last running back drafted who has legitimate top 5 upside. But other than that, I'm kind of drafting safer guys in the later rounds. I had a ton of Blunt early on, so he's still in my top 4. And then I also had Ryan Matthews and Jonathan Stewart, who I know TJ is high on. But I'll let TJ talk about them.
Yeah, J. Stu and Matthews. At 28 of 84 on J. Stu, 21 of 84 on Matthews. The only other guy ahead of them is Bilal Powell. I have nearly 50% on. But,
50%?
Nearly. I'm at 36 of 84, so actually only about 40%.
Whew.
It's wild.
There was good news out on him today. Some beat reporters said they thought he'd be in line for a huge amount of targets.
You'd imagine so. I'll let Johnny go in on him. Chan Gailey's passing down back.
For Bilal Powell?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Forte is not going to. You didn't bring a running back his age to give him 100% of the snaps. And Chan Gailey has always used 2 running backs historically. And he uses running backs who both have receiving ability. When he was in Buffalo, he used Fred Jackson, and then he used C.J. Spiller. And then last year he tried to use Ivory and Powell in those roles. And then the thing was that Ivory just wasn't very good. So then towards the end of the season, Ivory kind of just wasn't used at all. And he just likes to have those two receiving running backs because he likes to be able to do whatever he wants with them, moves them all over the field, and Powell really excelled in that role last year. And I think Forte will be good in the role that he's given, but Forte has really not been that type of receiving back that really is going out wide and stuff. He's been really, really good receiving out the backfield, but I'm not sure he's prepared to come in and immediately play that actual space back role that Powell was so good at last year.
Yeah, one of my favorite stats is that Fitzpatrick averaged 64 more yards per game when Powell saw at least 9 snaps. And then the Jets were 9-2 in games he played and 1-4 in games he did not. Powell was like sneaky good last year. I'm just not convinced that he maintains the same role. I think he probably sees a drop off. The question is like how big of a reduction in targets when your team signs one of the best receiving backs in the league. Forte just also happens to be good as a runner, in my opinion. I don't know, Christo. Who are your top running backs right now?
I'm glad to hear somebody's got some love for Forte because I'm not super high on him, but I am at 20%, and I think I like him a lot. I think there's great picks there. Stewart and Matthews, I love them, but I'm just afraid of missing them because if I'm gunning for them around where they go, that means I started heavy wide out, and if you brick them, then you're basically punting running back. But sorry to diverge there, but my number one is Danny Woodhead. I keep scooping him kind of whenever I can. C.J. Anderson, number 2 at 31%, and then I got Doug Martin and Freeman in a tie at 27%. So I think it speaks more to how I'm building my rosters overall and where I want guys that I have those particular those players because they just fit well with my kind of dream draft rollout basically.
So Christo, I kind of see you as like a value investor, like how you treat MFL 10s. Like you shy away from the flashy guys like Mike Evans, and you just chase like the reliable, steady guys with like a solid PE ratio, just constantly churning out profits, like Vincent Jackson, Danny Woodhead. When the rest of like the fantasy drafters out here are just kind of getting like crazy. Oh no, Melvin Gordon's the guy. He's gonna go crazy. And you're like, no, Danny Woodhead was the running back 3 last year, and he's being drafted as the running back 18 this year. Like, why would you? No, that's an obvious value.
It's huge value. I mean, 5 rounds of ADP have sucked up in that time, but at the same time, things are going to be better for him, I think, too. But yeah, I'm coming at like those first 5 rounds. I'm generally three running backs at a minimum and 2 wideouts. Yeah, and it's not surprising to me when I come out of the first 5 with 4 and 1. I do feel a lot of times I'm actually taking Woodhead just so that one of the guys that's running 0 wideout is not getting him, because that's the kind of stuff that saves, to me anyway, that 0 wideout strategy. If it's going to work in MFL 10s this year, and I'm not 100% sure it's going to, guys like Woodhead, Matthews, and Stewart are what's going to let them be successful pulling that off. So quite often I'll make that my 4th running back and then not touch another one and, decide whether I'm taking C.J. Spiller at the end of the draft or, Andre Ellington, whatever, something like that kind of idea.
Well, I'll let Johnny kind of take this from here because he said he's all over Melvin Gordon. You want to have this debate? Why draft Melvin Gordon over Danny Woodhead and vice versa?
My thing with Woodhead is that this is probably his last year on the Chargers, and they drafted Melvin Gordon with the intent of him being a 3-down back, and they forced him into that role multiple times last year. He did okay, and if they're really, really good this year, then they're probably going to run the ball a lot more. And if they're really, really bad this year, then they're probably going to give Melvin Gordon as many opportunities as they possibly can. So that's my my struggle with Woodhead in that I think he's kind of like an expendable piece on that offense.
And the bias here or whatever, huge Arizona fan, so I'm unfortunately well versed in the ways of Ken Whisenhunt, which is terrible. So I mean, he's going to be. I just think he'll get him out there. There's room for both of them. He never lets one guy get ahead and go. He doesn't even stick with the hot hand. I've watched him bench Edgerrin James for, Tim Hightower, which would make sense until how last year ended up. But I mean, it's apparently Tim Hightower has something in the tank. So he's just kind of like I don't know. Sorry, I meant Beanie Wells there as opposed to Tim Hightower. But he's just I don't know. I think they both get on the field, and Gordon's cheaper than Woodhead quite a bit. Like Woodhead, I mean, some of that I'm grabbing him in the fourth. Like he's going to get those points, I think. But I think Gordon's solid too.
Johnny, are you worried at all about the microfracture surgery for Melvin Gordon?
I was at first, and I stopped taking him, and all reports are that he's running completely fine. Doesn't seem that he's having any issues. And from my understanding of microfracture, and I looked it up a lot when it first happened with him, is that there are varying degrees of microfracture surgery. So doesn't seem like his was all that serious, especially because he wasn't even out that long. He was back to running pretty quickly. So I'm not all that concerned.
All right, well, I guess now we can move on to tight ends. My top 4 most owned tight ends are Kobe Fleener, Delaney Walker, Tyler Eifert, and Benjamin Watson. Surprisingly, ASJ is not on there. But, yeah, Walker, Fleener, Eifert, and Watson. TJ, I know you agree with me on some of those. Who are your top 4?
My top 2 are both over 25%, and that's Ebron and Olsen.
Whew.
So, yeah, I'm heavy into them. And then basically a 4-way tie for third is between Ertz, Eifert, Fleener, and Delaney. So we're in accord there for the most part. What about you, Christo?
Ben Watson, number 1 at 33%. Dwayne Allen at 31, and then Delaney Walker at 29. So,
Johnny?
Tyler Eifert, who I had a lot of before he got hurt, and I'm now taking him again now that I get him in the 8th. And then Dwayne Allen, Zach Ertz, and Kobe Fleener are all tied after him. But I diversify a ton at tight end. That's probably the position I diversify the most at, just because it really kind of just scares me this year.
TJ, when you're taking a guy like Fleener or Delaney Walker or an Eifert, let's say you get Eifert and Fleener, are you done at the position, or are you drafting a third?
Yeah, absolutely. That lets me it just opens up another roster spot almost always for a late receiver, because there's so much value all the way through the 20th round at wide receiver. I've been saying it all off season. I don't feel like there's much of a drop-off between the 9th and 20th round at wide receiver. So I like to get a couple of tight ends, load up the position, and be done with it.
That's super interesting, man. I don't know how. You mentioned the 2 defense and the 2 tight end, and I can't. I'm like 3 and 3. That's amazing. I think it's cool. I think you got a lot of that 9th to 20th round might be a bit hot, as they say, but it makes a lot of sense. There's not a big drop off from me picking Vincent Jackson saying yay to what I'm getting to saying Stevie Johnson. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, with the 2 and 2, if I have something like Olsen, Ebron, Seattle, Houston at the tight end and defense position, I'm moving on and trying to load up skill position. Well, I guess tight end qualifies, but wide receiver usually is my late fill-in.
Were there any defenses you guys wanted to talk about as your most owned?
Tennessee.
Why is that, Christo?
Because they're there, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I have nothing. I'm starting to reach for them a lot. largely back to kind of what you said, TJ, where the same wideouts, you're feeling the same wideout value is like it's kind of stagnant. And I'm going pretty heavy running back, so I'm quite often chasing wideouts. I was doing a draft earlier today, and I think 3 of my wideouts were drafted from like round 12 on, which after you put in 3 running backs in front of them, there's not a whole lot of room for premium or good wideouts, as people might say. So it's just interesting to see that that value is definitely there for other people. So yeah, it's kind of it's interesting this year. It's what it's doing is I'm getting defenses earlier now, probably in the last couple of weeks. Starting to reach out there for Carolina, and I'll reach up for Arizona, etc. once in a while, and then go from there. So.
And a question for Christo from Mike Beers. He wanted to know what you pay attention to the most: recent performance, health, ADP, beat reports, draft position. He just wanted to know what are you really looking for?
I don't know if you put it in one thing, but ADP is probably first and foremost on my top of the list. Probably a little bit of VBD, which I think is old school at this point, maybe disputed to some level whether we should be using it, but I think it's still there. I saw something today where the question was if we went too far on the reality of VBD versus just ADP and where we should get, but pretty much ADP.
You're saying variable based drafting, right? The football guys kind of terminology.
The difference between running back 1 and 24 and where you want to line up in there. So, I still, if we go to roster construction, I'm like 2 a religion, 2 QB, 5 running back, 7 wide out, 3 tight end, 3 defense, and I make it work there. So because I'm doing that, and that's based off of a Monte Cristo report that showed up on RotoViz a few years ago by Spider 2Y for kind of the most, the optimum line. That forces the rest of my draft flow basically from there.
What about you, TJ? Someone asked us earlier, who are your top defenses? You said last year you had a lot of Denver Broncos.
Yes, and I'm still on a lot of the higher ADP defenses. Houston is my most owned by a lot. I actually have 33 shares of the Houston defense. Seattle at 25, Denver at 20. I never jump in higher than the very end of the 13th round to grab Denver, and I'm in the 14th or 15th to take the rest of them, so I don't hop way just ridiculously high. That hurts your team probably. But I do want to have 2 quality defenses, or that I'm projecting as quality defenses. Otherwise, if they go higher than ADP, if they're auto-picked in the 10th round, then I'm doing what Christo and Mike Beers do. I'm just waiting, and I'm going to take 3 and let the percentages play themselves.
Yeah, I have no idea who my most owned defenses are, and I kind of just don't really care. I'm just that guy. Don't really pay too much attention to that position. Maybe I should. Maybe Beers was right. Maybe I should. But I will read to you what Aaron H. said to me. He said that he thinks that he disagrees with the 3 defense strategy. Thinks that would be for someone who's not very confident in taking somebody in the late rounds. He'd only do that if there was really no one else left to choose from. He said he especially doesn't do it early on due to injuries and things like that, but later on, maybe in August, if there's no one really he likes left, he'll do 3 defenses, but for the most part, he kind of stays strict with 2 defenses, which is what I have done for the most part as well. Johnny, was there anything you wanted to add on defenses?
Other than that I'm taking San Francisco.
Yeah, Johnny's loading up on San Francisco. I have no idea how long this podcast has run for because I forgot to do a timer because I pre-gamed the Power Hour pod, which is always always a bad decision. But I want to add, like, finish with something fun. So I'm gonna make up something right now that literally none of us has prepared for, including myself, and that is your one recommendation to people drafting right now and through August. If there was one thing you could tell drafters right now what to do, like your one golden rule, like you do this, you're gonna be all right. Whether it's you draft this one player, you're gonna be good, or you draft this position. While you guys think about that, I guess mine right now would be I don't ever want to leave a draft without getting one of D-Wash of the Oakland Raiders. He's my top target right now. Far and away. Literally, if I leave a draft and I don't get him, I feel like bad to the pit of my stomach. D-Wash, I want Aguilar, and I want CJA. And maybe this changes within the next few weeks, but as of right now, as ADP stands, if I don't get at least two of those three guys in a draft, I don't feel too good. I'm not sure which one of you has thought of something, so I'll let the first one feeling confident enough to jump in. So next one up.
I'll just say.
Go ahead, Jen.
I'll just say don't reach. If you're doing 10 or 15 of these things, your guys will be there eventually. So don't take somebody around early that you just really want to have, because eventually they're going to fall to you. So there's just don't do it. Be very, very adamant about that. It'll come to you.
I like it. Don't suck the value out of them.
That's actually a fantastic point. I think my favorite player is whoever dropped around. Even if I hate them, they dropped around. If they dropped 8 to 12 spots, I'm taking them every single time. Maybe even if I don't need them, I'm chasing those value drops more than I am most specific players. All right, TJ or Christo, who wants to take the next one?
You go, TJ.
All right, I'm just looking at my most owned, and on the higher levels of it, the guy with the most linear ADP throughout the entire offseason is Philip Dorsett. He's generally falling into the 12th and 13th round. That offense should be much closer to what it was projected at last year than what it's currently being projected at this year. So I do think he's a guy that ends up being a value, especially if you're like me and needing to fill in the wide receiver position later in drafts. I do have a lot of Moncrief, too, less T.Y. Hilton. So there's where I think that target distribution might end up.
TJ, I love T.Y. Hilton this year, but I'll ignore that for now. You forgot to mention that with Kobe Fleener gone, that's one less tight ends, maybe less 2 tight end sets, maybe more 3 wide receiver sets for Dorsett. Do you think that's possible?
Oh, you'd imagine they're going to be in 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, probably over 90% of the snaps. So
that's a lot of opportunity for Dorsett. And if I remember correctly, coming out of college, he specialized as that kind of Rashad Perriman type deep threat with like elite speed, which kind of profiles well for best ball leagues, think in the vein of Deshaun Jackson.
Yes, absolutely. And he was probably overdrafted. We are talking about Ryan Grigson here. But,
yeah.
He was a first-round pick, so they are going to give him every opportunity to succeed. So just don't see a reason to fade him, especially where he's going.
Christo, have you thought of anything?
Yeah, man. I kind of everyone's touched on it. It's come up a bunch here. Whether when you're talking about value earlier on, and kind of ties in here. Like I tweeted out to you the other day, Scott, about there was a little Jay-Z verse, that it just said, what they want, we give it to them. What they abandon, and just take it, man. You know, like it's like all the drafts are organic, and just run with it, right? Like it's like you're saying, it's gonna come. I'm not sweating that, you know, 4 of my 7 wideouts came from the 12th round on. Like that's how I feel. You do a draft, it's gonna work or it's not. So, you know, just be out there and have fun. And you know, the community is fantastic. Just have fun. Like we're all playing these different variants of a game that basically started, likely for most of us, from a home league with some good buddies who did this, and just kind of keep that. So let it happen, you know.
Let the draft fall to you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, kind of like, I don't know if that's Beers or FF That's Hep. Who needs a shout out? He's doing wonderful stuff out there. FF_Hep. You know, that's in his bio actually. May all the draft fall to you. So that's kind of, you know, fantastic dude. Join his charity leagues. Go from there. There's the shout out city you were trying to run with last week. So.
Awesome, guys. We had an awesome time, I think. This is really sick. Podcasting with the 2 guys who really killed MFL10s last year. Hope they kill it this year, especially because we agree on a lot of guys. Follow TJ Calkins at TJCalkins. Follow Christo, aka The What, at TH3WHAT. Also find TJ's work at 2qbs.com. Always follow myself at Dude Fantasy Bro, and check out my work at PFF. Follow Johnny at Super Duper Man 22. Is that right? Is it 22? Yeah. It's
yep.
Guys, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks to everyone for listening. If you liked the theme song that we have on iTunes, that was at Slopshaw, Alex Bradshaw, lead singer of Saturday Drive. Also, check out the Power Hour MFL10 that we have running. All the spots have been filled, but that should be going up tomorrow. Johnny, you usually do the outros. Am I forgetting anything?
That's it, man. Find us on iTunes. Leave us a review.
Boom. Count it.